All right, hello everybody. We are makeshifting this today. Let me see if I have a way to look. I have my Narnia book. Maybe I can set up the camera on that. Usually, you guys know I'm in the wilderness, in the woods, but right now I'm in my garage for this, and I'll show you. Here's all the C.S. Lewis books. We're about to read Sir Gibbie, the George MacDonald book. Here's the George MacDonald books. If you want to see other books of his, there's a whole shelf, well, one shelf, but this is a whole bookshelf full of C.S. Lewis and people that influenced C.S. Lewis. I worked at those are Chesterton. Anyway, oh, that's my book. That's so funny. I didn't place that there. I just put it there to encourage myself to keep going, right? You know, when we have our difficulties and stuff. And so we all need our encouragements. Let's see if I can set this up in a different way. So this is like old school. Oh, good. The light just came on better. And so George MacDonald was C.S. Lewis's spiritual mentor. And it is cold outside, and I was going to do this at the sunset, and things got thrown around, and I have 1 hour from, well, a little less than an hour now from right now for us to just get our reading in, because this is the same day I always record it and post it, and I really wanted to get it for us. So welcome. I'll do my thing where I for all you have been here for the other videos. What I often do is I will wave the book when we're actually going to start, because sometimes I do a little bit of intro, like today. You got to see some of his books. I hope I didn't go too fast. You have the whole hour to look at those. Maybe I'll move some of the times. Anyway, I didn't know this was going to happen, so, but I keep my garage pretty tidy. I like books like, you know, Bilbo Baggins's house in The Hobbit. I'm like, that's the best when they're all over like his hobbit hole. I love that, but I'm actually more neat than Bilbo. All right. Oh, that's the last book we did, Mysticism. Well, a long time ago we did, Studying the Nature and Development of Spiritual Consciousness. That's from the 1800s. But and anyway, okay, so here I'm waving it. That means we're starting. So welcome here to this different setting today. Where's, I think my exercise bike is, yeah, in the background a little. Let me see if whatever. I'm just gonna, I say to my kids sometimes, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Oh, this is like the most beautiful part. And so, it's too bad because there's like, I love reading outside because I get to be outside and you all get to experience nature while we're doing this. So use your imagination this time, or if you have two screens, play one of my other ones on mute while you're listening to this. You know, it's the same background. All right, so we are on chapter 22, and it's called Refuge. And I don't know why that light went out, but that's okay. All right, so it was anyway, if you want to know about George MacDonald or Gibbie, then just look it up or watch one of the old ones. Welcome here. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. This is like the best time ever. I was like, I can't get through one of these days with, you know, I can, but you know, it's just such a part of my life now, and I love bringing it to you guys as well. All right. It was a lovely Saturday evening in Glashgar. The few flowers about the small turf cottage. So I've been staring at screens all day doing this work I had to get done today. So let's see if I can. All right, I'll do my best. Scented the air in the hot western sun. All right. The heather was not in bloom yet, and there were no trees. But there were rocks and stones and a brawling burn that half surrounded a little field of oats, one of the potatoes, and a small spot with a few stalks of cabbage and kale, on the borders of which grew some bushes of double daisies and primroses and carnations. Okay, so we read this one part last week, just this first part, but I wanted to get into this chapter because it's one of my favorites in this book. And this book will totally transform you. Like, I'm so happy that we're doing this. I'm going to grab another light. So, I know I have one out here. If not, let me figure out how to maneuver because there. You got to do things as a woman. Let's see. Let's see if this one's plugged in. I have a lamp for here's the plug. Okay, so one moment. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for being patient. This is one of those extension cords that has some kind of protection on it. Perfect. All right. We have a lamp. I hope you got to see the book. There's a Mark Rothko book. That was one of my friend Elliot's favorite artists. Okay. Just bring a lamp with you, right? All right, sorry about the setup, y'all. This'll do. Okay, that's so much better. These Janet tended as part of her household, while her husband saw to the oats and the potatoes. Robert had charge of the few sheep on the mountain, which belonged to the farmer at the Mains. And for his trouble had the cottage and the land, most of which he had himself reclaimed. He had also a certain allowance of meal, which was paid in portions, as corn went from the farm to the mill. If they happened to fall short, the miller would always advance them as much as they needed, repaying himself, and not very strictly, the next time the corn was sent from the Mains. Oh, that's good. I think he's favoring them, not himself. They were never in any want and never had any money except what their children brought them out of their small wages. But that was plenty for their every need, nor had they the faintest feeling that they were persons to be pitied. It was very cold up there in winter, to be sure, and they both suffered from rheumatism, but they had no debt, no fear, much love, and between them, this being mostly Janet's, a large hope for what lay on the other side of death. As to the rheumatism, that was necessary, Janet said, to teach them patience, for they had no other trouble. They were indeed growing old, but neither had begun to find age a burden yet. And when it should prove such, they had a daughter prepared to give up service and go home to help them. Their thoughts about themselves were nearly lost in their thoughts about each other, their children, and their friends. Janet's main care was her old man, and Robert turned to Janet as the one stay of his life, next to the God in whom he trusted. He did not think so much about God as she. He was not able, nor did he read so much of his Bible, but she often read to him, and when they when any of his children were there of an evening, he always took the book while Janet prayed at home. His closet was the mountainside, where he would kneel in the heather and pray to him who saw unseen, the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God. The sheep took no heed of him, but sometimes when he rose from his knees, he saw Oscar. Oscar's their dog, right? Gazing at him with deepest regard. He would feel a little as if he had not quite entered enough into his closet, and would wonder what the dog was thinking. All day, from the mountain and sky and preaching burns, from the rivers that are preaching, from the sheep and his dog, from winter storms, spring sun and winds, or summer warmth and glow. But more than all, when he went home from the presence and influence of his wife, came to him somehow, who can explain how? Spiritual nourishment and vital growth. One great thing in it was that he kept growing wiser and better without knowing it. It's good because Jesus says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, or right hand know what your left hand is doing. I can't remember. One receives and one gives. And so it's like, don't let the receiving hand know how much it's giving, or what it's doing, or something like that. That's what I heard one time. So he's growing spiritually because we eat the spiritual food. This is spiritual food for us. If St. Paul had to give up judging his own self, perhaps Robert Grant might get through without ever beginning it. He loved life, but if he had been asked why, he might not have found a ready answer. He loved his wife just because she was Janet. Blithely, he left his cottage in the morning, deep breathing the mountain air, as if it were his first in the blissful world. And all day, the essential bliss of being was his. But the immediate hope of his heart was not the heavenly city. It was his home and his old woman, right? That's what they're just calling her, right? And her talk of what she had found in her Bible that day, strangely mingled even to confusion with his faith in God, was his absolute trust in his wife, a confidence not very different in kind from the faith which so many Christians place in the mother of our Lord. To Robert, Janet was one who knew, one who was far ken. I don't know what this word is. I think I said it before. Far ben, B-E-N though, B-E-N. This is like he writes in Scottish brogue sometimes, right? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. I'm so glad, because I would just sit here and, take this time. I'm committed to reading this book myself, but I'm so glad to share it with you. Anyway, I'll stop interrupting the story. With the Father of Lights. She was far ben with the Father of Lights. She perceived his intentions, understood his words, did his will, dwelt in the secret place of the Most High. Oh yeah, I got this ring, a long time ago, because it reminds me, when you pray, shut the outer doors, go into your inner room. And someone taught me, shut the door of your senses as well. If you're, your stomach is like, I'm really hungry right now. And you just shut the door to all of that and to everything around you. Go into your inner room and pray. Father, forgive me because I prayed my evening prayer so fast before this. Anyway. And there was, so, all right. Maybe I'll get to say them over tonight. We'll see. Or read them again. So he, okay. When Janet entered into the kingdom of her father, she would see that he was not left outside. He trusted that she would make sure her husband was not left outside. He was as sure of her love to himself as he was of God's love to her, and was certain she could never be content without her old man. He was himself a dull soul, he thought, and could not expect the great God to take much notice of him, but he would allow Janet to look after him. He had a vague conviction that he would not be very hard to save, for he knew himself ready to do whatever was required of him. None of all this was plain to his consciousness, however, or I dare say he would have begun at once to combat the feeling, right, that he wasn't well enough himself to go before God, I'm sure. Anyway, his soul anxiety, on the other hand, was neither about life nor death, about this world nor the next, but that his children should be honest and honorable, fear God, and keep his commandments. Around them, all and each, the thoughts of father and mother were constantly hovering, as if to watch them and ward off evil. Almost from the day now, many years ago, when I don't like looking down, so I'm trying to figure out how to. It's like, okay. We're dealing. It's okay. I'll look up every now and again for us. His soul anxiety, on the other hand, was neither about life nor death, about this world nor the next, but that his children should be honest and honorable, fear God, and keep his commandments. Around them, all and each, the thoughts of father and mother were constantly hovering, as if to watch them and ward off evil. Almost from the day many years ago, when because of distance and difficulty, she ceased to go to church, Janet had taken to her New Testament in a new fashion, right? Because they're up on this hill and they have rheumatism. And so anyway, she possessed an instinctive power of discriminating character, which had its root and growth in the simplicity of her own. She had always been a student of those phases of humanity that came within her kin. Excuse me. She had a large share of that interest in her fellows and their affairs, which is the very bloom upon ripe humanity. With these qualifications and the interpretive light afforded her by her own calm, practical way of living, she came to understand men and their actions, especially where the latter differed from what might ordinarily have been expected, in a marvelous way. Her faculty amounted almost to sympathetic contact with the very humanity. When, therefore, she found herself in the remote spot where she could see so little of her kind, she hardly knew by what initiation, to turn her study upon the story of our Lord's life. Nor was it long before it possessed her utterly, so that she concentrated upon it all the light and power of vision she had gathered from her experience of humanity. It ought not, therefore, to be wonderful how much she now understood of the true humanity, with what simple directions she knew what many of the words of the Son of Man meant, and perceived many of the germs of his individual actions. Hence it followed naturally that the thought of him and the hope of one day seeing him became her one informing idea. She was now such another as those women who ministered to him on the earth. Wow. Sorry, I get teary. I'm not going to apologize. She was now such another as those women who ministered to him on the earth. A certain gentle indifference she showed to things considered important. The neighbor's attitude attributed to weakness of character and called softness, while the honesty, energy, and directness with which she acted upon insights they did not possess, they attributed to intellectual derangement, right? She was over easy. They would say she's over easy. That's how they said, too easy to people. They said when the talk had been of prudence or worldly prospect. She was over hard, they said, when the question had been of right and wrong. Wow. The same afternoon, a neighbor on her way over the shoulder of the hill to the next village had called upon her and found her brushing the rafters of her cottage with a broom at the end of a long stick. "Save us, Janet! What are you after? I've never saw a thing," she exclaimed. And she says, I don't know how I'd never thought of this thing before," answered Janet, leaning on her broom. I'm just going to translate it so I don't go through and you can see it if you want to see it, because this is a free copyright book. If you want to see how she's talking, and there is a man that like translated the Scottish for us, but I'm going to just do my best to say what she's saying, because some people are getting closed caption in other languages, and if I try to say it in the Scottish and it doesn't make sense, then they're not going to see the words. So I'll do my best, but some of it I can't always get, but we'll see. I don't know how I never thought of it before," answered Janet, leaning her broom against the wall and dusting a chair for her visitor. "But this morning, when my man and me was sitting at our breakfast, there came a clap of thunder, and it just garred a bit of the house trim, and a little fell off. Anyway, some of the soot fell off. Anyway, that could have been a thing as we're intending, you know. Say what was to be said, but set them right." I don't know. She's like figuring out how to clean that area of the house after and down fell a soot until the very spoon of my man was carrying. So it's honest. She's saying, I'm being honest. So like soot fell off into his spoon, right? Or something like this. "Oh, wow. But you might have waited till Donald came home. He would have done it half the time. Because of your aching joints, right? He doesn't have the aching joints." "I couldn't put it off," said Janet. "Who knows when the Lord might come?" He's gonna come. It says he's gonna come at the cock crowing the day, but he may be here before night, right? Anyway, always have your house. That's what I was saying. That's so funny. I never talk about my house, but I cleaned a lot of it yesterday. We had a guest, and I cleaned it even more. And so it's nice to keep your place tidy. Always when I read George MacDonald books, it always makes me want to clean my house. It's so funny. So if you found yourself wanting to clean your house after you've been reading him or listening to him, then you're not alone, right? "Well, Aya," said her visitor, rising, "I'm going over to the town to buy a few things. Something for a pair of stockings for my man. Good day to you, Janet." What, niece? I wonder," she added to herself as she left the house. "The woman's clean demented." I hope she doesn't mean like out of her mind, but I don't know. DEMENTIT. So whatever that is, if you understand the Scottish, put it for us in the comments if you'd like. The moment she was gone, Janet caught up her broom again and went spying about over the roof. Now the light was coming back on. Ceiling. There was none after long tangles of agglomerated cobweb and smoke. So she got it. "Aye," she said to herself, "what know ye when he may be at the door? And I would like to see him here. I would like to hear Christ say if he comes to the door," right? "Janet, you might have your house a bit cleaner." I don't want to hear him say that. "You might have your house a little cleaner. When you can, I might be at hand," or something like that. Anyway. With all the cleaning she could give it, her cottage would have looked but a place of misery to many a benevolent woman, who, if she had lived there, would not have been so benevolent as Janet, or would have kept the place half so clean. Other people wouldn't have, but for her soul was alive and rich, and out of her soul not education or habit, came the smallest of her virtues. Having finished at last, she took her bosom to the door and beat the drum against a stone, right? That's done. I don't know what BASOM. It's not, I think it's BE, sorry. That's weird. Then she took the broom, not her bosom. I thought it was BO. It's so some of this writing is like faded out because this is from the 1800s. So it's not just my eyes. Anyway, that done, she stood along the path down the hill. It was that by which her sons and daughters every Saturday came climbing one after the other to her house from their various labors in the valley below. I think it was bosom because it says to her bosom again, like to her. I think that's like this whole house area. Through the sunset, through the long twilight, through the moonlight, each urged by a heart eager to look again upon father and mother, right? It's worth climbing up the big hill. Usually I climb up to read this story. So I got to climb today. I only had an hour to walk and not an hour to go up to our place and an hour to read. And anyway, the sun was now far down his western arc and nearly on the level with her eyes. And as she gazed into the darkness of too much light, suddenly emerged from it, rose upward, staggered toward her. Was it an angel? Was it a specter? Did her old eyes deceive her, or was the second sight born in her now? First, in her old age. Second sight is being able to see in the spiritual realm. It seemed a child reeling and spreading out hands that groped. She covered her eyes for a moment, for it might be a vision in the sun, not on the earth, and looked again. It was indeed a naked child. And was she still so dazzled by the red sun as to see red where red was none? Or were those indeed blood-red streaks on his white skin? Straight now, though slow, he came towards her. It was the same child who had come and gone so strangely before. He held out his hands to her and fell on his face at her feet like one dead. Then, with a horror of pitiful amazement, she saw a great cross marked in 2 cruel stripes on his back. And the thoughts that thereupon went coursing through her loving imagination, it would be hard to set forth. Could it be that the Lord was still child and man, suffering for his race, to deliver his brothers and sisters from their sins, wondering, enduring, beaten, blessing still, accepting the evil, slaying it, and returning none? His patience, the one rock where the evil word finds no echo. His heart, the one gulf into which the Dead Sea wave rushes with no recoil, from which ever flows back only purest water, sweet and cool. The one abyss of destroying love, into which all wrong tumbles, and finding no reaction is lost, ceases forevermore. There in its own cradle, the primal order is still nursed, still restored. Thence is still set forth afresh to leaven with new life the world ever aging. So if you want to know even what she's talking about, is Psalm 103:3 has that. It says, He forgives all of our iniquities and heals all our diseases, all right? So it just, in that verse, it encapsulates all of what she said. She's talking about when Christ died, he went into Hades and conquered death and came back up, rose again, resurrection power. And then the Holy Spirit is in us. Now, when you ask God to, to forgive you through Jesus Christ and to fill you with his Holy Spirit, then it says the Holy Spirit, the raised from Christ from the dead, is in you. And so you have all this power. A lot of Christians don't even know they have this power. We do, but you have to activate it with faith and all this stuff as well. Shadowy and vague. Love activates it as well, just so you know. Shadowy and vague. They were, but vaguely shadowed. Shadowy and vague they were, but vaguely shadowed were thoughts like these in Janet's mind as she stood half stunned, regarding the one moment, motionless, the prostrate child and his wrongs. The next, she lifted him in her arms and, holding him tenderly to her mother heart, carried him into the house, murmuring over him dove-like sounds of pity and endearment mingled with indignation. Like, who would do this to this child, this innocent child, right? There she laid him on his side in her bed, her and her husband's, the one bed probably they had in the house, covered him gently over and hastened to the little byre at the end of the cottage to get him some warm milk. When she returned, he had already lifted his heavy eyelids and was looking wearily about the place. But when he saw her, did ever so bright a sunshine as that smile of his. Eyes and mouth and whole face flashed upon Janet. She set down the milk and went to the bedside. Gibbie put up his arms, threw them around her neck, and clung to her as if she had been his mother. He never knew his mother. I know this is a story, but this is our lives. This is our lives. This is the true love that comes from heaven for each of us. It's true. She's just showing it in a book. She's showing it. George MacDonald had it in order to write it. So he put up his arms and threw them round her neck and clung to her as if she had been his mother. And from that moment, she was his mother. Her heart was big enough to mother all the children of humanity. She was like Charity herself, with her babes innumerable. They translate the word, we read that, I think yesterday, 1 Corinthians 13. If I give all my possessions to the poor, but I don't have love, then it's nothing. And the word love there is, they translate it as charity. It's agape in Greek. So it's this unconditional love that comes from above, from the Father and Mother in heaven. Anyway, it's funny, I'm in the garage, so this is where I keep my extra boxes of Kleenexes. I think I'll get one, because I cry so much sometimes up on the hill, and if you've been here, so I'll put one in my bag, because I have my bag now. I'm always like going off camera to like use some sleeve of something I have in there. Okay, excuse me. Ugh. Okay, so if you weren't here before, then you don't know where Gibbie's coming from, but that's okay. Just trust that you're here for a reason today, and you can go back. Gibbie was this child. They would probably call him autistic. Now he's mute, and he was helping out this farmer, his sister. He was helping her do all of these chores, and they didn't know if it was a brownie or a fairy or something, because they couldn't understand how someone was getting in and doing all the chores. But then it was just Gibbie. It was Sir Gibbie. He was this boy. He wanted to help out. He wanted to give back. And anyway, so and you can read it. Well, he'll probably describe it. I forgot. They have to describe it to what happened. I forgot. It's in the story. See, I gotta trust that it's in the story. All right. She was like Charity herself, with her babes innumerable. What have they done to you, my bairn? My child, right? She said it in tones pitiful, with the pity of the shepherd, of the sheep himself, the capital S shepherd, right? I'm going to go back to crying. The good shepherd. Jesus said, John 10:11, I am the good shepherd, right? And he means it, and he means it. So if you ever need a shepherd, a mother or a father, Psalm 27:10 says that when my mother and father forsake me, the I am that I am, the Lord picks me up. And Psalm 23 says, the Lord is my shepherd. And so I encourage you to start knowing that. Anyway. No reply came back, only another heavenly smile, a smile of absolute content. For what were stripes and nakedness and hunger to Gibbie now that he had a woman to love? His mother, his new mother. Gibbie's necessity was to love. But here was more. Here was love offering herself to him, except in his friend Sam. It says in Black Sam. He was of African descent, right? He had scarcely caught a good sight of her before, like that kind of love, motherly love or whatever. He had never before been kissed by that might of God's grace, a true woman. She was an old woman who kissed him, but none who have drunk of the old wine of love straightway desire the new, for they know that the old is better. This is awesome. Match such as hers with thy love, maiden of 20, and where wilt thou find the man, I say, not worthy, but fit to mate with thee? For hers was love indeed, not the love, but the love of life with a capital L, right? Already Gibbie's faintness was gone, and all his ills with it. She raised him with one arm and held the bowl to his mouth, and he drank. But all the time he drank, his eyes were fixed upon hers. When she laid him down again, and he turned on his side, off his scored back, and in a moment was fast asleep. She stood gazing at him. So still was he that she began to fear he was dead, and laid her hand on his heart. It was beating steadily, and she left him to make some gruel for him against his waking. So for when he wakes up, that's how they speak back then, right? Her soul was glad, for she was ministering to her master, not the less in his own self that it was in the person of one of his little ones. So, she's her master. It's capital M. So Jesus says, if you give someone a cup of water in my name, it's as if you're doing it for me. All right. So it's like I'm reading Jesus' story right now from the 1800s. That's so awesome, because as I do unto you, I'm doing for my Lord. And so anyway, what an honor. It's an honor. I'm so glad you're here. We're like a secret group right now for now, right? I think 10 people watched the last one of this, if you want to know. She stood gazing. It doesn't matter. You're doing it for one, right? Gruel, as such a one makes it, is no common fare, but delicate enough for a queen. That's kind of like some good oatmeal with butter in it, right? Because or full cream. She had a cow up there that they creamed anyway. They got milk from. She set it down by the fire and proceeded to lay the supper for her expected children. The Kleenexes are dropping over there. Yellow-white table of soft, smooth fur needed no cloth, only horn spoons and wooden cups, right? Probably like big bowl cups. At length, a hand came to the latch, and mother and daughter greeted as mother and daughter only can. Then came a son, and mother and son greeted as mother and son only can. They kept on arriving singly to the number of 6, 2 daughters and 4 sons, the youngest some little time after the rest. Each as he or she came, Janet took to the bed and showed her 7th child where he slept. I could cry for about an hour right now. I'm going to hold it back. I know George MacDonald went many times. They didn't have money. You know, they had to skip lots of meals. Thank you, George MacDonald. I'm just saying, like, God, send my thanks up. I'm not trying to talk to the dead. Each time she showed him to secure a like pity with her own, she turned down the bedclothes and revealed the little back smitten with eternal memorial of the divine perfection. The women wept. The young men were furious, each after his fashion. Because they knew, like, there's nothing he would have done. Anyway. God blank. Oh, it's the D word. Darn, right? I'm just going to say that in case there are kids around. But I'm sure he put it in here for a reason. The weasel did it, cried one of them, clenching his teeth and forgetting himself quite in the rage of the moment. Laddie, take back the words, said her mother calmly. Again, you don't, or something about, are you going to forgive your enemies? If you don't forgive, it says, if you don't forgive your enemies, you won't be forgiven yourself, all right? So you don't damn someone to hell, right? Anyway, and you don't take God's name in vain. But another way you don't take God's name in vain is by not choosing to love when you have the capacity within you to love. God's name is in you. God made you out of God, right? And so we're taking his name in vain when we don't love well. Anyway. That's something hard, mother, answered the offender with an attempted smile. Hard, she echoed. It may well be hard, for it cannot be helped, right? What would be the use of forgiving ye if it wasn't a little bit hard, right? Or how could it win at you? Or what would you care for it about carrying or make of carrying it to hell, or hating you, or hate, or how can you not, okay, for how can God, okay, if there's hate in your heart, right? She's like, if there's hate verily in your heart, for how can God be love? Hell, if God is love, then hell must be hate. My bairn, my son, them that want to forgive their enemies carries a nest of devilry in their own bosoms at the very spirit of it. God himself cannot win till for being with the small is right. Muckle, anyway, he's saying you have to pardon. You have to see how is he going to pardon you? Jesus said that if you don't forgive, you will not be forgiven, because you're blocking your heart actually from forgiveness, right? Here's my heart necklace. I get to wear it because I'm not wearing my workout clothes. But let him understand as he came, forget them, and maybe there'll be a turning again, the Satan as it is in them. So you have to turn over. It's like, get behind me, Satan, is what Jesus said when St. Peter said, for Jesus not to go die. He's like, no, you're not going to go do that. He's like, get behind me, Satan. You don't have the things of God, but the things of man on your mind, right? They wanted him to be king right then. Right, here's the passage. So if you want to translate it for us or just translate it yourself, go ahead. It's right there. Put it in the comments. Well, but he's not my enemy, says the youth. Not your enemy, returned the mother. No, your enemy. Sort of a barn like that. I don't know what he's talking about, but of course, most certainly, but he's the enemy of the human race of mankind. He trespasses uncommonly sore against me. I'm well sure of that, and I'm glad of it. I'm glad that it has for me something of my enemies, and I forgive him. I really wish I knew this, for it was him so affronted with himself it'd be done if he would fain hide his head in a midden. Anyway, okay, so hopefully you can read that yourself. No, no, mother, said the oldest son, who had not yet spoken, but whose countenance had been showing a mighty indignation. That's surely as Sir Abanon as at Jock said. What, laddie? Would you have a fellow creature live to eternity, and having been ashamed of such a thing as that? I don't know. They're just talking about make sure to forgive. And they're saying it so much better. George MacDonald is writing it so much, but anyway, knowing ye at the more shame of the mere grace. My word was the best beginning of better at I could wise him. Na, laddie. Anyway, here, I'll do the next paragraph so you can see. I'll say what's going on. I'm just going to paraphrase it then. So she's saying someone that's not affronted with himself and can't muckle as lift up to heaven, their eyes to heaven, but must smite upon the breast and say, God be merciful to me, a sinner. That's my curse upon him, for I wouldn't have him. It's like God won't have a devil in us. He wants to take it out of us, right? When he comes to think that shame of himself, I'll take him to my heart as I take the bairn he misguided. Only I doubt I'll be long afore that, for it takes time to fess a man like that till's holy senses, till we get, God is in the business of sanctifying us. All my videos are about this in one way or another. All right. And so anyway, the sixth of the family now entered, and his mother led him up to the bed. The Lord preserve us, cried Donald Grant. It's the Cratcher. Ah, is that the gate that had been the gate they had guided him? The quietest creature and the willingness, like he's been so willing to help Donald with he would watch the cows for him so Donald could read his book of poetry and all his books. You know him then, laddie, said his mother. Well, yeah, that. Well, that, said Donald. He's been with me on this nowadays for weeks till the day. With that, he hurried into the story of his acquaintance with Gibbie, and the fable of the brownie would soon have disappeared from Doorside had it not been that Janet desired them to say nothing about the boy, but let him be forgotten by his enemies till he grew able to take care of himself. So besides, she said, their father might get into trouble with the master and the laird if it were known that they had him. So they instructed them not to go tell down below. You'll see. Donald vowed to himself that if Fergus had a hand in the abuse, he would never speak civil word to him again. He lives in the same house as Fergus. Fergus is the one that caught him and took him to go get this, to go get punished for helping. He never took anything from their house, right? Ye Cratcher, he cried, and darting to the bed, he took Gibbie's face between his hands and said in a voice to which pity and sympathy gave a tone like his mother's, what the devil was in at? Lick it, ye like that. Like what was the devil in the people that whipped you like that? Ah, I wish I had the trimming of him, like that, I could knock that guy off, or whatever, the trimming of him, whatever that means, right? Just give him a good slug back or something, but still, his mom's probably going to correct him. Gibbie smiled. Has the ill guardianship taken the tongue from him, think ye? Asked the mother. Oh, like the ill guideship, like the way they treated him. Have they taken his voice from him? Nah, answered Donald. He's been like this since I ever knew him. I never heard a word from the mouth of him. He'll be in deaf and dumb, said Janet. No, he's not deaf, mother, and I know well. But dumb he may be, I'm thinking. Cratcher, he continued, stooping over the boy. Can you hear what I'm saying? If you can hear what I'm saying, take hold of my nose. That's what he's saying, right? Thereupon, with a laugh like that of an amused infant, Gibbie raised his hand and with thumb and forefinger gently pinched Donald's large nose. Here's the whole page if there's more conversation that you want to see. That was his friend Donald speaking. Janet's son, right? At which they all burst out laughing with joy. It was as if they had found an angel's baby in the bushes and been afraid he was an idiot, but were now relieved. Away went Janet and brought him his gruel. It was with no small difficulty and not without a moan or two that Gibbie sat up in the bed to take it. There was something very pathetic in the full content with which he sat there in his nakedness and looked smiling at them. He had the bed, the blanket. He was under the blanket still. It was more than content. It was bliss that shone in his countenance. He took the wooden bowl and began to eat. And the look he cast on Janet seemed to say he had never tasted such delicious food. Indeed, he never had. And the poor cottage, where once more he was a stranger and taken in, appeared to Gibbie a place of wondrous wealth. And so it was, not only in the best treasures, those of loving kindness, but in all homely plenty as well, for the needs of the body, a very temple of the God of simplicity and comfort, rich in warmth and rest and food. Janet went to her, kissed, where she brought out a garment of her own, and aired it at the fire. It had no lace at the neck or cuffs, no embroidery down the front, but when she put it on him, amid the tearful laughter of the women, and had tied it round his waist with a piece of list that had served as a garter, it made a dress most becoming in their eyes, and gave Gibbie indescribable pleasure from its whiteness and its coolness to his inflamed skin. So it's kind of like, back in Little House on the Prairie days, they'd wear like one of those long robes to go to sleep. It's like that. It seems like. So they're not putting a dress on him. They had just finished clothing him thus when the good man came home, and the mother's narration had to be given afresh, with Donald's notes explanatory and completive. As the latter reported the doings of the imagined brownie and the commotion they had caused at the mains and along Darside, Gibbie's countenance flashed with pleasure and fun, and at last he broke into such a peal of laughter as he'd never, for pure merriment. So he hadn't heard the story of how people perceived what he was doing, right? Had never, for mere merriment, had been heard before so high on Glashgar. All joined involuntarily in the laugh. Even the old man, who had been listening with his gray eyebrows knit and hanging like bosky precipices over the tarns of his deepest eyes, taking in every word but uttering not one. When at last his wife showed him the child's back, he lifted his two hands and moved them slowly up and down in a pitiful appeal for man against man, to the sire of the race, to God. Like, have pity, have mercy. But still he said not a word. He's a man of few words, right? As to utterance of what lay in the deep soul of him, the old man, except sometimes to his wife, was nearly as dumb as Gibbie himself. Like, he didn't speak much, right? They sat down to their homely meal. Simplest things will carry the result of honest attention as plainly as more elaborate dishes. and which it might be well to consider. They will carry no more than they are worth. Of Janet's supper, it is enough to say that it was such as became her heart. In the judgment of all her guests, the porridge was such as none could make but mother, the milk such as none but mother's cow could yield, and the cakes such as she only could bake. All right, I'm going to end this now so I can upload it for us. I wish you so much love. See you next time. We'll go back to their house, right? And Sir Gibbie, much love.